Hi guys, this is Nasa Stred. Welcome back to the channel. Today on the channel, we'll be learning how to make the stylish princess dart gown with a double collar and a bishop sleeve with a tie. If it's something you're interested in, give this video a thumbs up and let's get started. Now I have my paper on fold and I'm going ahead to mark my vertical measurements, which is the shoulder to the bust point, to the underbust, the waist, the hip, and the full length. And I'm just making my lines across those points which I have marked, and I'm also ensuring to label those points. Okay, so I'm just going to label the lines which I have not labeled, and then after that, on my first line, which is a shoulder line, I'll go ahead and mark half of my shoulder measurement at that point, and then from there I'll go down by 8 inches for my armhole depth. So this is gotten by dividing your round bust by 6 and then adding 1.5 inches to that. So I'm making a horizontal line at that point which I marked, and then I'll also take half of my shoulder point measurement on that point so that I can get a straight line. Okay, now I'm going to mark my neck width of 3.5 inches. Okay, and then I'll come down from this point by 1 inch for my shoulder slope, and I will just connect this together. So for the neck depth of this dress, we'll be using a neck depth of 4 inches. I'll just mark that and connect that with a simple curve. We're using a C neckline for this tutorial. So that we have it. Okay. Now the next thing we're going to mark is our dart. So the dart is gotten from the difference from one nipple to the other. That's your nipple to nipple measurement divided by 2, and then add half of an inch to that. So after doing my calculation, I got 4 inches. I'm marking that from the bust point to the full length of my piece. Okay, so I'm going to mark 4 inches from the closed end inwards down to the full length, and I will connect that together. After that, I'll go over to my armhole area and I'll get the midpoint of that measurement, okay, and then connect it to meet the bust point. So you're going to use the curve part of your row to get that, okay. So ensure you take the measurement you have around there and then connect it. Ensure to just mark out any curved edges. Now on the bust, I'll go in and out on both sides by half of an inch. I'll repeat the same process on the waist and then I'll connect them together. After doing that, I'll go over to the hip and I'll go up from my hip point by 3 inches. That is where my dart is going to end, and I'll connect from the waist to meet that point. Okay, now going over to the bust point, I'll go down by half of an inch. This is to avoid pointy ends, and then I'll connect from my underbust to that point which I came down by half of an inch. So I'm using the curved part of my row to do that. Okay, not the straight part and not the very curvy part of the row. Okay, so we have that down there. Now on my armhole depth line, I'll go down from the midpoint which I marked earlier by half of an inch, and then on the bust point I'll go up by half of an inch and I'll connect it together. So on the armhole area I came down by 1.5 inches, okay, not half of an inch, and I just connected that together. Now I'm just going to curve every sharp edge I have. I'm just blending that. Now to avoid shortage while we're stitching this together, on that second line or at the armhole, we're going to extend it by that 1.5 inches also. So you're going to extend it by the direction of your first line, okay? Just extend it by 1.5 inches, and there we have it for the dart. So now we're going to go in and take our horizontal measurement. You're going to mark a quarter of your round bust, and then you add the dart intake you have around the chest area, and I'm using a stitching allowance of 2 inches. Repeat the same thing at the waist point. Take the dart intake, take quarter of your round waist, and then add um, your stitching allowance of 2 inches, and also at the hip point. And after that, you just connect them together. Now, to get the measurement for the full length, you're going to take what you have around the waist. Now, you can either minus half of an inch or 1 inch depending on how fitted you want it to be. So in this case, I'm going to just minus half inch from what I have at the hip area, and I will connect it. So what I had at the hip area after doing my calculations was 12.5 inches. I just removed half inch, and then I marked 12 inches at that full length point. I connected my armhole, and I'm going ahead to just cut out this pattern. Okay, so this is what we have for the front piece. This is what it looks like. So remember I said I had this on fold. So this is what it looks like, and this is what our center front looks like. Now go ahead and draft that for that of the back. Now for the back, I have my pattern paper. I do not have this on fold. I already marked out my starting line, and then I came in from the end, from the midpoint by 2 inches and made a line there. So I'm going ahead to mark my vertical measurements excluding my under bust point. So I just marked my shoulder to the bust, to the waist, to the hip, and then to the full length. And I'm just making my lines at those points which I marked. So remember, I omitted the under bust measurement, and I'm just labeling them down. So what I'll do now is that on my starting line, which is the shoulder line, I'm going to mark half of my shoulder measurement just like I did in front. I'll mark it there, and then I'll come down from that point by 8 inches, which is my armhole depth, and then I'm going to make a horizontal line at that point. And after making my horizontal line at that point, I will also mark half of my shoulder measurement at that line and connect it together. So that line, it's going to be my chest line. Okay. Now on that point, I came down by 1 inches, and then I'm marking the same neck width of 3.5. So note that your neck width needs to match for the back and the front, and I just connected that together. Now the neck depth for the back will be 1.5 inches. I've gone ahead to mark that, and I will just connect it together with a simple curve like so. So for the back, we're not using a princess dart, just a normal dart. So I'm going to get the midpoint of that of the armhole depth, and then I will mark quarter of my round bust on my chest line and just connect that to create my armhole curve. Now to mark the dart for the back, you're going to also use your bust span, which is the distance from one nipple to the other divided by 2 plus half of an inch. Okay, so I'm going to mark this from the chest line down to the hip point. Okay, unlike the front, we took it down to the full length and we started from the bust point, but for the back, we started from the chest point and then we stopped at the hip point. And I'm just connecting it together in a straight line. Now at the waist area, we go in and out by half of an inch on both sides. Then from the hip, we go up by 3 inches, just like we did in front, and then we're going to connect it to meet what we have at the waist. All right, then from the chest line, you come down by 1 inches and also connect it to meet what you have at the waist point. Okay, that is all for the dart. We'll just go ahead to impute our body measurement. You're going to add your stitching allowance of 2.5 inches after marking quarter of your round measurement of your chest, that's the bust point, sorry, your waist, the hip, and then you're going to connect them together. So remember, the only place we took off that for the back is just at the waist. So remember to include that so that you're not shortened. Now to get the full length, just like we did in front, we're just going to minus half of an inch. That's to get the horizontal measurement for the full length of our back piece. We'll do the same thing, minus half inch from what you have at the hip area. Now we'll go over to work on our zipper. Now at the waist point, you go in by half of an inch at the waist area. You're going to just mark it down, and you're going to make a connection from that point to the neck area and then to the hip area. So just watch how I'm connecting this. Okay, this is so that we're going to avoid zipper bulge at the back of our dress. Now after that, just go ahead and mark your zip allowance. So I'm using a zip allowance of 1.5 inches for this dress. I'm just going to mark that. So at the waist point, for that of the waist, you're going to take your zipper measurement allowance from that half inch point you went in at the waist. So just watch how I connected this so that you're not confused, and then you're going to connect them together. So it's going to create a sort of curve around that back area. So I was just ensuring that my measurements were accurate and then touching up the parts where my measurement was not right. So ensure you take the right measurement so that your zip can sit properly at the back of your dress. Okay, now for this dress, we're going to have a slit. So from the edge of my dress, I came up by 6 inches, actually came down by 6 inches from my hip point to just mark where I want my slit to start. So what I'm going to do is that at that point where I came down by 6 inches, I'm going to also mark that 1.5 inches of zipper allowance. So remember I said what I had at the back is 2 inches. That what I had, sorry, what I came in at the back was 2 inches. So you're going to just mark that 1.5 inches point again at that your slit end, okay, where the slit is going to start from. So this is what we're going to have for the back. So now we're just going to connect the ends together. So you can notice that I'm just taking measurements to ensure it's correct. Now for the neckline, we're just going to align our neckline into the zip allowance point, and this is all we have for the back. We'll just go ahead to cut this out. So what I'm going to do is to cut open my dart at the back. This will help me to trace it out on my piece before I stitch down properly. Okay, it's going to be easier for me to stitch down later on. So this is what we have for the back. We'll just go ahead and cut on our fabrics. So I've gone ahead to cut on my fabric for the front. I added half of an inch to the shoulder, to the neckline, and to the side where I'll be joining together. Now for the length, I added 2 inches, which is going to serve as my hemming allowance. And for the side of the side piece, that's the side front, I added half of an inch to the stitching area, to the armhole area, and also 2 inches to the length. I also went ahead to cut out on my lining, so I ensured that my lining is 2 inches shorter than what I had for the main piece of my fabric. Okay, so I actually just did this tutorial with 2 yards of fabric. So what I'm going to do is to start stitching this down. Starting with the main piece, I'm going to lay them right side to right side and stitch it down around the dart area for the main piece, and repeat the same thing on my lining piece. Now for the back piece also, I've gone ahead to cut it out. I added half of an inch to the shoulder, just like I did for the front, to the neckline, to the armhole, also to the zip allowance area to enable me to turn at that point. I also added 2 inches to the length, okay, and made my lining to be 3 inches shorter. So I've gone ahead to trace out my dart on my lining and on my main piece. So what I'll do is to take this over to the machine and stitch down my dart on all 4 pieces of this, to the main piece and the fabric. Now this is what it looks like for the front after I finish stitching for both my lining and the main piece, and I ironed open my seam. So I'm going to place this right side to right side and stitch at the edge. Now for the back, I've also stitched my dart, and then I've also ironed it. So I stitched my dart on the lining and the main piece. So for the back, you're going to start with the down. You stitch the down first, then you stitch the neckline and you stitch the sides. Okay, now over to our collar piece. So for this collar, you're going to determine which part you want your long collar to sit, either on the right or on the left side. So I'm just going ahead to label the points where I have this. So I want the long part of my collar to be on the right side. That's the bigger collar. Now what I'm doing is to just take measurement. So I'm measuring 3 inches for the width of my collar. That's for the long part. Then for the length, how extended I want it to be. So initially I measured 5 inch, and then later on I went ahead to tweak that to 6 inches. So after connecting this, I will just create a curve to meet those points. I'm using my curved rule, because the collar, it's not going to be straight. Okay, so ensure that you don't have any curved edges. So I'm going to just connect this to meet the midpoint. Okay, so this was the point where I decided to extend it to be longer. So for yours, you can make it as long as you want, as wide as you want. I actually wished I made mine wider. Okay, at the end of the day, I wished it was wider than what I had. So you can decide to just increase the length and the width if you so wish to. So I'm just going to connect this to meet the 3 inches point I had earlier, so that I can have a better curve on this side. All right, now for the left side, which is a smaller collar, I'm also going to use 3 inches. So for this, I just use 3 inches for everything, for the width and also for the length. So I just measured 3 inches at various points. So at the length, at the midpoint, I also measured 3 inches. So this is 3 inches, while the other one is 3 inches, 3 inches, and then 6 inches for the length. So I'm just using my curve rule to just connect that to the midpoint, because both colors will be meeting at the middle. All right, so this is what we have for this. So this is what it looks like. Okay, so you can decide to also tweak this to whatever version you want. So initially I tried something, but it didn't work out. I had to leave it like that. So I'm just going ahead to label my collar so that I'll know how to stitch this to my fabric piece later on. And after that, I'll just cut them out so that I can have my piece. Alright, so this is what we have for the collar. I'll go ahead and cut this out on my fabric and see how nice it's looking already. So this is what I have after cutting out on my fabric. I added 1/2 inch all around, and then I ironed my hair stay to this. So I'll just take this over to the machine, and then I'm going to stitch the down part of this and then the midpoint of that. Now for the front part of my fabric, this is what it looks like. I just only stitched the hem. Now I'm bringing in my collar after I've turned it out and given it a very good press. So you can first of all stitch your collar to your neck piece. Okay, arrange them properly and then stitch. So you can actually change this at this point and then swipe each to whatever side. It will still work because of the neck design we have for this. It's just an easy neck design. So you're going to place that around your neck area. You stitch it down. You can stitch that firstly before you place your lining piece on top of it and stitch it. So what I'll do is to stitch all three of them together. I'm going to sandwich my collar in between my lining and the main piece of fabric, and then I'll go ahead and then stitch the neck area by 1/2 inch. Okay, after stitching by 1/2 inch, I'll just stitch down, close down the sides by 1/2 inch also. So this is what it looks like after I finish, and then I went ahead to give it a really good press. This is the front piece. So we're going to just keep our front piece aside, and then we'll work on the back. So for the back, this is what it looks like after I turned it over. I turned it by the sides, and then I flipped it to the right and I gave it a very good press. So the next thing we want to do is to fix the zipper for our back piece. So we're going to just place them together and then pin them so that it stays in place, so we can take our measurements for the zip. So after pinning your piece together, you want to determine where you want your zipper to end. So for comfort, your zip should get to your hip point so that this passes through the hip easily. Okay, take note of that. Your zip should stop at your hip point. So for me, what I did was I measured where I wanted this to end. What I actually used was 20 inches. So you should take this a bit lower than that so that it's easier for your hip to pass and it's comfortable. So what you're going to do is to make a mark at the point where you want your zip to end. Okay, I just went ahead to mark that point where I want it to end. And then from that point where I marked for my zip to end, I came in I came in by 1.5 inches. Remember, our zip allowance is 1.5. You're going to mark that 1.5 inches until you get to the point where you have your curve. You're going to end it there. So you're going to take this over to the machine and stitch at that point into that curve end. Okay. So this is what it looks like after I finish stitching my, you can see the curve end there. Now we're going to stitch on top of this so that we can have that stay in place and it's not moving about. So you're going to just make a vertical line downwards, and after that go ahead and place your zip. So this is what it looks like after I finish stitching at that point. Okay, and I've also stitched down my zip to this. So the next thing I'm going to do is to bring in my front piece. I'm going to align them right side to right side. So I want to stitch it down by the side. Now to stitch by the side, you're going to take the measurement you have around the bust, and any excess you have, you distribute it to both sides. Okay, you take your measurement, your round bust, divide it by 2. Any excess you have, you distribute it to both sides, the left and the right. You repeat the same thing at the waist, at the hip, and also at the full length, and then use that to close it down by the sides. Okay. Now this is what it looks like after I finish. So the next thing I want to do is to join the shoulders. I'm going to align my shoulder fabric to fabric and then lining to lining, and I'm going to pin this down. Okay, I pray that I just want you to know that you need to pin it down so that it stays in place, so that it's going to align accurately. So after pinning down, you go ahead and stitch it together by 1/2 inch, and then you repeat the same process on the other part of your shoulder piece. Okay, so ensure to pin it down. So this is what it looks like after I finish doing that. So our dress is actually 90% ready. So what we need to do next is the sleeve. So you're going to take the measurement of what you have around your sleeve area. So ensure to wear this on your body in case it doesn't fit, the sleeve doesn't fit, so you can just make adjustment. Now I've gone ahead to fold my fabric. I'm using my Duchess fabric for the sleeve, just like I did for my collar. Fold my fabric into 4 with a width of 15 inches. So we're using a bishop sleeve for this, where we have the down part, that's the wrist part of our sleeve, bigger than what we have at the shoulder area. So I've marked my starting line and I'm going ahead to mark the full length. Now because we are adding a band to the full length, you're going to minus the width of that your band from your full length measurement. So I'm minusing 1.5 inches because that is what I want for my band from my full length, and I'm adding 1/2 inch for the joining allowance, and making, just marked the full end point and made a line there. Now from the starting point also, I'll go down by 4 inches for my sleeve cap, and I will make a line there. So at that point for my sleeve cap, I'm going to just create a curve from the top to meet that line. So I'm just using my free hand to just do a freehand sketch to meet that line. Then I'm going to just take the measurement around the curve, that the measurement I got from the sleeve opening of my dress. That's what I'm going to take, plus 1 inch of stitching allowance. I'm going to mark that down at that point. So just ensure that you curve your tape while you're taking that measurement so that it comes out accurate. And then you add 1 inch for stitching allowance. Now from that point, you connect it to the full length, sorry, in a slanted line like so. Okay, you're connecting to the edge of your full length. Remember I said the base of the sleeve is wider than what we have at the top because of the gathers at the end. All right, So we're just using our free hand to create that. And after doing that, we go ahead and cut this out. So this is what we have. Now for my band, I went ahead to cut out a piece. I used the measurement around my wrist plus 1 inch for ease, and then I added an extra 15 inches to that. So the width I have here is 4 inches. Now from the center, you're going to have two of that for two parts of your sleeve. Now from the center, you're going to mark half of that measurement you use. So remember I said I use my round wrist is 7 inches plus 1 inch is 8. 8 divided by 2 is 4. So I just measured 4 inches from the midpoint of my fold because I have this piece here on fold for both of my sleeve. And then I'm making a half of an inch cut inwards on all four of them. So what I'm going to do is to place this wrong side right side facing each other. I'm going to take this over to the machine and I'm going to stitch. Now our stitching process, what we're going to do is that, so ensure you make that half of an inch cut on the sides, both sides, okay? You're going to take this over to the machine and close it down. When you get to the point where you made your first notch, you skip and then start from the second notch. So this is what it looks like after I finished, and this is the opening of where it's open for where my sleeve is going to sit in. I hope you understand what I'm trying to say. Now for the sleeve, the main piece of our sleeve, you will go up from the edge by 4 inches. You go up from the edge of this by 4 inches, and you're going to make a mark at that point. So after making a mark, just like we did for the other piece, you're going to make a cut of half of an inch inward. So you're doing this for the parts, all parts of it. So the cut you're making should be half of an inch, okay, not deeper than that. So I just made a half of an inch cut on this. So what I'll do is to take this over to the machine. I'm just going to fold this by quarter of an inch firstly, and then another quarter of an inch to just hem up that part. Okay, on all four sides, you're going to do that on all four sides and then run a loose stitch at the base. So this is what it looks like after I finish, and I've gone ahead to also run my loose stitch. So I'm just going to gather this up. So you're going to gather this up to what you have, like your wrist measurement. So for me, I'm gathering this up to 8 inches. I will ensure that it is 8 inches, okay? And after doing that, I'll bring in my band and I'll place this in between that opening of the band, and I'll go ahead and stitch it down. So this is what it looks like after I finish. Now to conclude for our sleeve, we're going to place this wrong side to wrong side and we go ahead and stitch it. So from the top, you start by 1 inch and then hit that half-inch mark you have at the base. So this is what it looks like after I finish doing for both of my sleeves. Now the next thing we want to do is to attach to our dress. You're going to just stitch this down to the parts of your dress. So this is the final look of the dress after I finish attaching my sleeve. And so for the wrist, you're just going to just tie this around this to give it a nice finish. Thank you for watching. This brings us to the end of the video. If you're yet to subscribe, do well to subscribe. If you have any questions, do well to drop it in the comment section. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.